You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYBC.
WCYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WYBC. It is my last day here in Israel and Syria and Lebanon, and allow me to say it has been a wild trip right off the bat. We had some brownout and blackout issues yesterday, not just with power but with internet service, so we had to get a little creative with the show, and I was hoping upon hope that there would be some incredible breaking new news, that when I would open up my phone this morning here in Israel, and I would read over the rest of what happened yesterday, I would find an incredible stash of incredibly intelligent people making major headlines across the country. And no, instead, what we found was a lot of regurgitated nonsense that has somehow gotten even worse than when last we left it. And of course, a new layer of scandal in the Obamagate, Russiagate scandal. So, new from Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. She says the newly declassified top secret emails, which were sent on December of 2016, complying with President Obama's order to create the manufactured January 2017 intelligence community assessment about Russia, expose how Director of National Intelligence then, James Clapper, demanded the intelligence community fall in line behind the Russia hoax. Clapper admits that it was a team sport. It required a, quote, compromise on our normal modalities. Gotta love corporate psychobabble. Now, I've looked at the documents here, and they do, in fact, show the Director of National Intelligence then telling everyone to get on the train or go away. And this really is yet another smoking gun in this particular situation. It seems like this entire time we've gone through this wonderful nightmare of, again, scandal after scandal after scandal, it being just as bad as many suspected and claimed that it was. There's an article that comes out from a snarky right-wing pundit or some kind of an analyst at a publication that says, well, actually, there's nothing illegal or even new that we didn't already know about the Trump-Russiagate scandal. And that's not, in fact, correct whatsoever at all. Here's another great example of why we are finding a genuine conspiracy in which the heads of national intelligence, the director of the FBI, James Comey, the head of the CIA, John Brennan, conspired to subvert justice in the United States by going against the normal realm of how a particular intelligence investigation would be carried out in order to specifically and politically target Donald Trump. That lasted not only through the campaign. If it was just done through the campaign, okay, that would be bad enough, that would be terrible, and that would demand accountability and individuals thrown in jail. This was something that they continued to push, that they continued to send to certain individuals who I'm, not going to name, like Adam Schiff, who then used this as a means of stopping the progress of the Trump administration. There is something that has been known in the corporate and the industrial trade world for a long time. If you really want to ruin a project, directly opposing the project is not the best way to do it. You really want to get in there and stop something from happening. What you do is you fill up the project or the person running the project's time with a bunch of stupid, small, officious, legal, and nonsensical tasks. So, for example, let us say that you, dear friend and viewer or listener, you want if you live in a town, you want to build a shed in your backyard. Good on you. Having another shed isn't going to hurt anybody. It increases organization, probably looks nice. I'm an American that is for sheds. Well, what you have to do is you have to file a permit. And you have to file a permit with the planning office and then the zoning office. Then you have to get the EPA involved because, God forbid, you infringe on the nesting ground of the Sasquatchian Wahooglaklex, which is apparently some kind of incredibly rare mosquito that happened to make your backyard its nesting grounds. Then you got to get a permit with the Chamber of Commerce. Then you got to get a road permit because, well, if the cement truck can't pull into your driveway, I guess they're going to have to teleport it. So you got to get a road permit. One of the reasons that you have to do all of these permits is so that there are fewer people that are going about the process of building sheds. It's less busy work for your local authority. And it turns out during the Trump administration, that these investigations were consistently brought forward to harass the Trump administration so that they could deal with nothing else whatsoever but this nonsense. We are now at the point where the individuals in the Obama intelligence community should be brought up on Intelligence and Espionage Act violations, as well as every single obstruction of justice there is a law for. And that this is going to be going forward in the Southern District of Florida as opposed to Washington, D.C. is a very, very good thing. Again, I've said it before. You're not going to get Obama in jail. It's not going to happen. You're not going to get Hillary Clinton in jail. Likely, it's not going to happen. Who are you going to get in jail? I'm making the bet, making the prediction right now. James Comey gets 10 years. Now, is that enough? No. But is it something? Is it a start to rebuilding institutions? Yeah, that's about as cautiously optimistic as I'm going to be. Now, personally, I would like to see the citizenships of Comey and Brennan and Clapper revoked and them sent to a lovely part of the world like El Salvador. But, we don't get everything we want in life while we're wishing for things. I'd also like a pony. So let's shift over to what the rest of the world couldn't get away from. Again, I was expecting brand new, bold, exciting headlines. What I have found is that, again, we all know that Washington, D.C. and Chicago are truly atrocious places. Yeah? We all know that there are places you don't walk at night because they're not great places to be. Did you guys know that right now I am not taking an evening walk through Gaza City because it's not a nice place, not nice stuff going on there? I'm not strolling through Syria. When we were at the border with Syria today, I'll let you know, we were under some interesting kinds of cover. We had liaison officers that were with us that were keeping a very close eye on us. And then the UN, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. In the United States, we understand there are cities, there are places that are not nice, that are not good. And the reason that they are not good is because Democrat foolish administrations have taken it upon themselves to focus on restorative justice nonsense, which just means not letting police do their jobs, and then creating an incentive structure that allows people to be vagrants eternally on the backs of the city. So it becomes eternally filthy, shout out to San Francisco, and it becomes eternally crime-ridden, shout out to Chirac. So this brings us to Washington, D.C., because, again, just like the Sydney Sweeney story just 2 weeks ago, man, time really flies, you have this Washington, D.C. story eating up the entire news cycle. Why is it eating up the entire news cycle? Well, I'll pose to you this. And it's not actually my point. I was talking to my old youth pastor, Jeremiah Clark, brilliant guy, this evening. We were chatting on the phone, Israel time, so mid-afternoon for y'all. And he made a pretty great point. This is just like the border during the Biden years. You'll remember that Trump came forward and said, all you got to do is enforce the law. You got to get out there, you got to send the National Guard down, you got to build a wall, and then it'll be fixed. And the Democrats said, no, you need this bipartisan law. And if you don't do this and you have all of these calculus, you got to let in 5,000 illegal immigrants before the Secretary of Homeland Security can then refer to the president to Article 32, Section C, and all that ridiculous nonsense. No, you just needed a president to come in and enforce federal law, which Trump has done. And it's worked. Now here we have the president of the United States, who is actually moving forward with his constitutional authority of bringing the National Guard into Washington, D.C., eliminating its sanctuary city status, as well as ensuring that the federal police, the Metropolitan Police of Washington, D.C., are actually doing their job and not harassing them and harrying them with a bunch of, again, cuddly psychologist nonsense. So what do you get? 45 arrests in D.C. last night, including 29 illegal immigrants. Here's Carolyn Levitt.
I have some updated statistics for you. Overnight, there were 45 criminal arrests made for assault, second and first degree. There were arrests made for the distribution of illegal drugs and narcotics that have now been removed off of the streets. There were 3 illegal firearms that were seized. And in addition to that, there were 29 illegal aliens who were removed off of Washington, D.C. streets last night, many of whom had final orders of removal. So,
Jeepers. It appears that there is, in fact, crime to tackle. And the left knows this, by the way. I reached out because I wasn't particularly satisfied with just getting secondhand clips. And I have confirmed from several individuals in Washington, D.C. who are very much on the left that they are really secretly happy about Donald Trump moving in to stop the crime problem, because it is a serious, serious problem. Again, polls from late April, early May show that 91% of people in D.C. say that crime is a serious problem. And this is even spread to where Morning Joe on MSNBC is now calling out other Democrats in the country for trying to whistle past the graveyard, like with the border, and say, it's not a crisis, we don't need any help. It's not going to work for him this time.
The answer to this problem for Democrats is not, oh, everything's okay, there's nothing to see here, move along. Oh, Washington has dropped 24% or whatever in crime. Well, let me give you some other numbers. The Washington Post took a poll at late April, early May. 91% of Washington residents say crime is a problem. 91%. 51%, it is an extremely serious problem.
Now, where did I see numbers like that before? Oh, yeah, during the last election, when the majority of Americans agreed that illegal immigration was a major problem for the country. And in fact, it became such a major problem for the country that it even beat out the economy as the number one issue for Americans. Since the Trump administration has come through, now it's not even in the top 10 as a priority for Americans, like for border crossings and illegal immigration actively happening, because the Trump administration has come through and solved it. And the point that, again, my former youth pastor was making to me today, that is why I'm now sharing this with you, again, being very transparent about where I get things. He makes the point that this is likely going to be a situation just like the border. Trump is going to solve crime in Washington, D.C. That will make every other Democrat a laughingstock at the city level. Now, you say, what does that have to do with anything? Because voters closely tie in how their congressional Democrats are doing to how city and local officials in large cities are doing. So, for example, Andre Carson in Indianapolis, he's a horrible person. He's also illiterate. When things are bad in Indianapolis at a crime level, there is a correlation that shows people don't view Andre Carson as well either. Now, does the congressman have really anything to do with local government? Not really. That's just a correlative. And right now, the Democrats are suffering from a serious lack of momentum. But I don't really want to get ahead of myself because there are a couple other reactions here that are key. We'll get to local stuff in the congressionals here in a minute. You know the deep state we were talking about in the last point, where there was a lot of stymieing of the Trump administration throughout his first term? Well, a Department of Justice employee has now been charged with felony assault because he hit a Border Patrol officer with a Subway sandwich in Washington, D.C. That's a real sentence that just came out of my mouth. Watch what comes out of this guy's hand. Sandwich, there he goes. All right, so I do want to point out one thing really quickly here. I don't know if anyone heard him scream, "This is MAGA country," before he then went and beat Jussie Smollett to death. But in any case, it's really funny. And Pam Bondi then asserted today, because there are people that are mocking the Trump administration for charging, this guy with a felony for, again, throwing something at a Border Patrol or a federal official. Again, you can't do that. If you throw water on an individual, that is assault. Again, you can't just go up to someone and then throw things at them. That's not allowed, especially if it's law enforcement. Context kind of matters here. And the real humor is that while the left is now losing their ever-loving mind over this sandwich story, this is clear evidence for fascism, they're going to once again hang all of their credibility, the credibility that really doesn't exist anymore, all of their morality and their hopes and their dreams on the stupidest possible thing. Remember, they did this with Kilmar Abrego Garcia, Maryland man and father, respected individual, who beat his wife with MS-13 tattooed knuckles and endangered children and, participated in human trafficking. Then what else do we have that they're doing the same thing to right now? Well, they're doing it with the crime situation. Mayor Muriel Bowser has decided that instead of saying, yeah, crime's kind of a problem, we're going to try to work with the Trump administration and ensure everyone keeps all of their rights, Mayor Bowser has come out with a new tweet and suggested we have beautiful neighborhoods across all 8 wards, an incredible team of local government workers, and a city that is running with the highest level of services for our residents. The real story of DC is coming out. And look, it's got all of the things that prove it's true. Here is a Muslim woman wearing a hijab and coveralls who is the garbage person. It's totally real and not a Getty Images photo. Oh, here's the woman reading to children, and also she has a zero waste shirt on because she's environmentally friendly. And in behind her, it says read aloud. Now, kids in Washington, D.C. can't read, but they have the words read aloud on the board. Wow. Who else? Oh, we have a female officer and a male officer, and they got their arms around each other. There's even an American flag there. Ain't that precious? Now, they're not out actually patrolling and stopping, the carjackings and the crimes in this photo, but, hey, they are on a sunny day with their arms around each other. It's incredible. I had no idea that people could smile and put their arms around each other in D.C. I thought it was illegal here until now. And last but not least, you see a woman in a purple shirt, a teacher, who is, it looks like, I don't know, having some kid set his clay art project down. As we all know, the number one way to prevent crime when a student grows up is to ensure that a woman in a purple jacket lowers their clay pots into a drying bin. Yes, we're saved. Congratulations. By the way, the idea that right now, she who has run off away to Martha's Vineyard to avoid all of the scandal and the chaos surrounding this, I would like to point out that this reminds me quite much of the Conan O'Brien tweet from 2018 when Trump was like, you know what really sucks? Haiti. People are eating each other and there's fires and there's corruption. Haiti is kind of a bleep hole country. And then Conan O'Brien, because, he vacationed in Haiti once ages ago, he took a picture of himself drinking out of a coconut at a resort and said, Haiti is truly a beautiful country. And then, people were eating each other and the cats and the dogs because, reality really is unmatched. So this is what Democrats are going to try to do. They're going to try to do the let's eat cake. They're going to go straight to the old, Marie Antoinette situation. So that all aside, this brings us to the far leftening of the Democrats. Now, again, we're going to keep coming back to this particular story, not because it's bursting with brand new information, but it is bursting with brand new examples of how awful one of the two main parties is getting. Those of you out there who are conservatives, you may say, Tony, the Democrats have been awful for a really long time. Yeah, I got you. I hear you. But you know what's worse than having rabies? Having pneumonia, AIDS, and rabies. And it seems like right now the Democrats are just picking up a disease a week. And they don't see that right now the entire country has lost such large amounts of faith in the Democratic Party that we really are starting to see a bifurcation within the Republican Party solidify, so that you really might start to see Republican primaries become the corner piece, the centerpiece, really, of the entire electoral process. Because right now, with the way the Democrats are running this party, I don't know if they're going to be able to hold long-term, forget congressional majority, I don't know if they're going to be able to keep away a congressional supermajority in the Senate at this rate. And I'm dead serious about this. So Representative Subramaniam, which I can only assume is a yam that is shaped like a very fancy car, has called Spanberger and Sherrill the future of the Democratic Party alongside socialist Mamdani. So the Democrats are going all in on the goofiest goobers that they can find. Check it out.
What we need to look at is the elections in Virginia this November to see a great candidate. Abigail Spanberger is running for governor, and she has both the charisma of someone like Mamdani, but also a really good ear to the ground and what people want, because has that lived experience. And so if we have more candidates like Spanberger and also in New Jersey we have a great candidate for governor, I think that's the future of the party there, is people who both have the pragmatism and the ear to the ground on what voters want and need, as well as are charismatic, really appeal to people.
So the plan moving forward that we're going to go with is you need to get out there and you need to be way crazier. You need to be just insane like Mamdani. You need to get really radical. And by the way, to be clear, Spanberger and Sherrill are both radical Democrats. I know Democrats haven't exactly been moderate, but more so than usual. Beto O'Rourke, down in Texas has just decided to tell Democrats all over the country they need to redraw all of their districts to eliminate Republican seats. And by the way, I should say after this, Gavin Newsom has now come forward and called a special session of the California Assembly to redraw California's House map before 2026. So here's Beto going out for it.
I also don't want Gavin Newsom and J.B. Pritzker and Kathy Hochul and any other Democrat who has unitary power in their state to wait for Texas to go first. I want us to seize the initiative instead of awaiting the punch thrown by these would-be fascists to hit us in the face and then respond. I want us to punch first, and I want us to punch harder. So I want them to redraw those districts right now.
Yeah. Again, best of luck to you with this. It's not going to work. There's a new poll out from Politico, which shows that California voters prefer keeping an independent congressional district panel to determine whether the state's House seats are drawn. By the way, the margins here is nearly 2-1. 64% of people in California want Gavin Newsom to leave things the bleep alone. Only 36% of respondents back returning congressional redistricting authority to the state lawmakers. So as humorous as this is going to sound, I actually really do agree with the idea of state legislatures manning up and drawing the districts themselves. Independent panels are never independent. But according to the voters in California, this is an unpopular move for Gavin Newsom. So he's going to try to squeeze the juice out of, again, an orange that's already been squeezed. California's already gerrymandered. Illinois, New York, they're already gerrymandered. Again, the threat from the Massachusetts governor to redistrict Massachusetts, all 9 of its congressional seats are already Democrat. What are you going to do? Like just redraw lines of blue over blue? Congratulations. So what they're going to end up doing is, as I've said before, they will piss off the Supreme Court of the United States, who will then drop the hammer, and a lot of you'll essentially see like 12 gerrymandered Democrat states and like 5 Republican gerrymandered states return to a more grid-based line. And then Democrats are going to have some really rough, brand new districts that are ridiculously competitive because they're going to be drawn kind of grid square. So by all means, please continue poking this bear. You don't even have the support of people in your own party. Again, Democrats' favorability within their own party has now hit yet another record low. We just keep hitting like record upon record upon record because there's nowhere lower they can really go. And yet Hakeem Jeffries just gets out there and keeps on digging.
A new poll shows Democrats facing a record low favorable number among members of their own political party. And that number is down actually 14 points just from November of last year. We call that a slide. A stark contrast to the GOP, where 91% hold a favorable view of the party.
Now you might say, Tony, that's like, Fox News talking about it. Oh, I'm sorry. That was a Gallup poll. Yeah, Gallup, not necessarily known for being super duper alley-ooper conservative. So in this particular instance, the Democrats have an 87% unfavorability with their own party. And Republicans have a 91% favorability with their own party. I don't know how you're going to get out of this. So when Hakeem Jeffries is actually asked questions about the direction the Democrats going, for example, with Mamdani, he can't even begin to broach the subject. He immediately tries to pivot to Trump attacks. Has it worked yet? No, but it is all he has. And if he doesn't play along, he won't even get to keep clinging desperately to his own position because he'll be ousted if he speaks against Mamdani.
Rams. Don't try to devastate them.
I understand that.
I'm just curious
I'm curious where you land on things like, freezing rent, free buses, giving away, free food at supermarkets and the like, and what you just think of that idea and what it represents.
Listen, Zoran is going to have to make the case to the people of New York City, including in the neighborhoods that I represent, that these ideas, which are designed to address affordability in New York City, and that as a top-line effort is important. The cost of living is the number one issue here in the city, number one issue across the country. It's why Donald Trump's poll numbers are in the basement right now.
But do you agree with those approaches as a solution? Look, you and I agree. Affordability is this number one issue in New York. It's the number one issue in the country. And so he has done a great job of identifying that issue and articulating that issue. The question is,
how you attack that issue. And what I'm asking you is whether you agree with the solutions that he's offering.
Here's what my solution would be. And I've said this directly to him and will continue to say it to policymakers across the city, the state, and the country. We have a situation in New York City and across America where the demand for housing that is affordable greatly exceeds the supply.
I love this so much because then the next obvious question is, have you found one Democrat mayor that has fixed this with a housing crisis? One. Have you ever found one Democrat that's like, oh, I have a solution, rent control? How did that work for New York in the 70s? Remind me, oh, yes, people burning down buildings to collect the insurance money. You can do this with crime as well. Name one blue city in which a Democrat mayor used their cuddly, shucksy doodles approach and lowered crime. Show me the city. Same with public schools. Show me the teacher union-backed method that improved student outcomes. You can't find it because Democrat policies don't work. They're these lovely daydreams of sad, depressed, lonely children that is so pathetic it can't even convince the Democrats to other Democrats. So, for example, Governor Pritzker, waddling through his last whatever, says that Democrats are exactly where they ought to be. Now, watch, if you're watching, where the camera cuts to, because it's just precious.
To the pundits and the critics about what direction the National Democratic Party needs to go, I say, take a look at Illinois Democrats. Yes, winning elections is partly about messaging and strategy, but it's mostly about values and delivering on them. And our values are exactly where they ought to be. So it's time to stop apologizing when we're not wrong.
Oop. So for those of you who are listening and not watching, the camera then cuts to a group of people at a couple of tables who are not clapping. And then Hakeem Jeffries, who notices the camera is pointed his direction, all of a sudden looks over, makes eye contact with the lens of the camera and is like, I'm clapping. You go, J.B. Pritzker. The reason that Hakeem Jeffries is not clapping in this particular situation is because every Democrat is aware. Well, that's not true. Every Democrat that is not Jasmine Crockett is in fact aware that the values they hold are not popular with American people. Now, most Democrats just have a lot of disdain for Americans that don't share those values. And so they end up losing the election and they're like, I can't believe it. I had no idea people didn't want to trans the children and cut their genitals off and let in all the illegals and then let crime run rampant through the street. I can't believe it. What? Here you have J.B. Pritzker saying our values are fine, our values are excellent. Ah, yes. Who are the people in Illinois that elect those Democrats? That would be Chicago. Chicago levies that. And Mayor Brandon Johnson is the Democrat mayor who has the lowest rating in the entire country. So again, these policies aren't even popular with hardline blue Democrats. And this opens up a field for Republicans like Senator Kennedy from Louisiana, otherwise known as a national treasure, to get on national television and roast them over the open coals in the most hilarious way that only he can do.
The mainstream wing of the party is scared to death of the loon wing. They won't speak up, and they don't stand for anything anymore. All they stand for is whatever is against whatever President Trump stands for. That's why we find ourselves in the extraordinary position of mainstream Democrats have now come out firmly and passionately in favor of crime in Washington, D.C. Why? Because Trump is trying to do something about it.
Chucky Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, they are, quote, minority leaders in name only. They'll never stand up to that wing, will they?
No, they could. And I don't mean any disrespect. I don't know Mr. Jeffries that well. I know Senator Schumer very well. So I say this with respect. Chuck and Hakeem need to go to Amazon, buy some testicles, and stand up to the loon wing of their party. Senator
Kennedy is, in fact, a national treasure. every single good church in the country has an old guy like that who just says things. And they are true, time-tested, honored pieces of wisdom. And so, yes, it is in fact true that if they did have a spine or some cojones, then they could in fact stand up to the party. But who do they have left? The traditional wings of the Democrat Party have abandoned them. Seriously, they've abandoned them. The union workers have left. The Clinton coalition is gone. It has been picked up by the new populist wing of the country, which is the Republican Party. And so as we look over the next couple of months, Trump has to do one thing and one thing only to do far better than is expected in the midterms. The one thing he has to do is deliver on promises. That's it. Trump has to continue delivering on promises. And like I believe is very, very likely going to happen with crime, though the Democrat Party, at least according to an NBC headline, this was just sent over to me by producer Daniel, apparently the NBC crew has, this is so nutty, by suggesting, let's see if I'll put this on the screen here too, by suggesting that other cities also run by black mayors may be next, President Trump was playing the worst game of racially divisive politics, one civil rights leader says. Yes. Yeah, that's it. Trump wants to go after black mayors. Yes. If there's ever been a single protest against black mayors in general, I have yet to find a single organized event that's people against black mayors. I don't know if that's, maybe in the horse community, people don't want black mares. They want speckled mares. Maybe the old gray mares, although they ain't what they used to be. Really, though, I don't see how the Democrats are going to just sing the same song sheet and clean up in the midterm. There's nothing to get them there. Now, some of the promises that Trump does need to deliver on, and in tandem with the Congress, is brokering a few things like the economy and then the peace deals. Now, Trump is on a roll with peace deals. He is. He is on a roll with economic leverage. The inflation numbers are not yet nice and tucked away. The PPI is currently a little rough. I believe its highest jump since 2022, although the consumer price index was steady as expected. So this brings us to the treaty side of things, or the brokering of peace. Trump is set to meet in this beautiful Alaska summit and is already planning on setting up the second meeting, which he calls, quote, very, very important. Here's the president of the United States getting ready to meet with Vladimir Putin.
We have a meeting with President Putin tomorrow. I think it's going to be a good meeting, but the more important meeting will be the second meeting that we're having. We're going to have a meeting with President Putin, President Zelensky, myself, and maybe we'll bring some of the European leaders along, maybe not. I don't know that it's going to be very important. We're going to see what happens. And I think President Putin will make peace. I think President Zelensky will make peace. We'll see if they can get along. And if they can, it'll be great. I've solved 6 wars in the last 6 months, a little more than 6 months now, and I'm very proud of it. I thought the easiest one would be this one. It's actually the most difficult. We have.
So a couple of things there. First of all, a little self-deprecation from Trump. Again, the man who has, quite the ego, a lot of confidence, he has admitted, because he was slammed. He said, I'm coming in there, I'm going to solve it in 24 hours. It was a little more difficult. Now, then he brokered 6 other major peace deals. He's like, look, I thought this was going to be the easiest one. Nah, it looks like this one's a little more challenging. We're going to work on it. Okay, fair. Fair. Indeed. Now we're in the position where Zelensky is grumbling and mumbling, said, we'll not give up any Russian territory. We'll keep Crimea and the Donbass. And, okay, I'm sorry, Ukraine's never getting Crimea back. They're just not. One of the reasons I say that is because the people of Crimea don't even want to be a part of Ukraine. I'm sorry, Crimea is not going back to Ukraine. It's just not. The Donbass, the region swapping some different provinces, or kind of what we would consider counties or shires if you're goofy and in the UK. Those particular regions, like the micro regions inside the different states in Ukraine, those regions, I could see probably the Donbass being split in half, which is just going to spell wonders for the next 100 years. Because region split in half, that always ends up working well. But it is a likely road to peace. Zelensky is probably going to be forced to the table at some point on accepting region transfer. And by the way, their summer offensives have just flopped. yet again, they had another big summer offensive, and it did absolutely nothing. So both of these nations do need an out. This is crushing Russia economically, and while the Russian people are definitely no stranger to starving, that's really not going to last long term. And the Ukrainian people are also, this war is really, you're going to see kind of a World War I armistice, and Trump will likely broker them to cut it. Now, there are a couple of fun facts here that producer Daniel did slide in here that I do think are kind of neat. It's the first time that Putin has made a trip to the United States since 2015, when he was here for the UN General Assembly in New York, and it will also be the first visit by a Russian leader to Alaska ever, which is notable because it was part of the Tsar's empire until 1867 when it was sold to the United States. Now, Dmitry Medvedev, who is insane, had made some saber-rattling nonsense about how, well, actually, Russia should still own Alaska. So they have said, at least according to some reports from the Kremlin, that there will be a joint press conference afterward. I'm really interested to see what that's going to look like. I would really also like to see who they have on the media poll for that. So whoever's in that media pool, we might even sling a couple of questions that way to see if anything comes out of it. So those things all said, I am getting ready to head out from Israel, and I do have a couple of things to share with you guys. I've got a lot of photos. We were in the Golan Heights today. We were talking about some of the Israeli-Lebanese stuff. We also interviewed some families with the Druze, including those who were the parents and siblings of the 12 children who lost their lives due to a horrible, horrible rocket attack. So there's a lot of stuff that I want to get into with that. Also answering a couple of questions that have been coming in, and maybe share some photos and videos and some good fun there. I'm not going to do that tonight because there's a lot of photos and a lot of videos, and I haven't had the time since we took the helicopter back to Jerusalem to dig through everything just yet. But we've got it. We're going to try to take our time and do this right. So those things said, I do want to leave with one particular notice from today. After observing the United Nations outside the border, I referenced earlier on in the show, the United Nations and all of their little miniature missions that they have, no matter where they are, United Nations troops are the most embarrassing second-rate JROTC cadet goofball wannabes I have ever seen in any kind of a military outfit ever. So we showed up to this UN demilitarized zone border between Israel and Lebanon. And, would this be, there's like this triangle point where Israel and then Lebanon and Syria all come together. And there's this border that is manned. There are supposed to be a few things when you man a military border, especially in a zone that, even if it hasn't been particularly attacked in 50 years, it is still a contentious region. It is an active combat zone, especially given how Israel has tanks all over the Golan Heights, etc. You should have at least 2 military police officers that are stationed on either side of the fences. They also told us not to take any photos, so of course I definitely didn't take any photos, and might be going through some of that kind of stuff later, maybe do some sketches, who knows. But that was a big problem. They had officers who were ladies that had their jewelry on, again, rifles on their backs. They're like dressed, ready for combat. Jewelry on, hair half down. I swear to you, I saw a man who was wearing 2 left boots. The slings of the UN officers' rifles were straining against the sights on the rifle. So when you have a rifle, and then you put an optic, you put some kind of a sight on the rifle, you have to take the time to zero that in, which involves shooting, making very small adjustments, and being very careful. After you have the attachment to the sight, whether it's a holographic, a red dot, ACOG scope, whatever, you have that on the rifle. You don't bump the sight, because if you've gotten a camera in focus before, or you've ever had a telescope, or hey, you're Americans, if you've ever had a gun with a sight before, even if they're manual or iron sights, you do not bump it, because once it gets out of whack, then it's useless for using to aim again. Now, if I have some kind of a sling, a piece of rope or fabric holding the rifle, and then I rest that sling against the sight. It creates constant stress and ruins the sighting. Why do I mention this? Because in basic training, they kind of go over and over and over, not letting things ruin your optics. In AIT and advanced infantry training, do the same thing. You will get lots of extra duties, punishments, for being stupid and letting things wreck the sights on your weapon. If you are you are supposed to be a professional fighting force, and instead you have a bunch of goofball clowns not taking it seriously, no wonder the UN has been ineffective in every single combat environment. I just thought that maybe they just had a bunch of ignorant people who they just gave like rifles that were just young and I guess that's what I saw. I wasn't expecting the sloppiness though. I was expecting maybe they were just like really corrupt or just really disinterested. They were somewhat alert, but it's like they gave a bunch of obese kids who play airsoft or paintball as their only physical exercise. Don't get me wrong, paintball and airsoft, very fun. But they gave like those like Ranger Rick kids, they just said, you know what, you get this UN outpost. Why do I bring that up at the end here? When you are told by politicians that the United Nations needs to go in and observe something, when you are told by various individuals out there in the wide blue yonder that what really needs to happen is this international coalition of experts coming in to distribute aid, and how dare you suggest they're corrupt or lazy or bad at their job. I witnessed first person a grown man wearing 2 left boots. Now, either his parents were cousins and he has 2 left feet, or maybe these are idiots. Just saying, they didn't have guards posted at the towers. The front half of the border was like a bunch of weirdly parked cars. There was no screening of the cars coming up to the border. I don't know if you guys know anything about Muslim terrorists, but their cars are a little explosive. It's embarrassing. It is embarrassing. The United Nations should not be taken seriously. I'll have other thoughts on the rest of my Israeli trip and some of the photos and things later. But as for just that one observation, when I was in a zone today that was not safe, when the UN was around, the only thing that I could think of was I could easily take your rifle, and it would be all the better for the rifle and everyone around if I just wrested it from your grasp. Because God forbid the strap that's currently ruining your sights mess up your makeup or your jewelry. Dear sweet heavens. All right, that said, I'm going to get ready to fly home because the flight is a lot closer to the end of this episode than I was hoping for. So you guys have a wonderful evening. We will be back on Monday. Not doing an episode tomorrow. I will be dealing with Newark. I hate Newark Airport. So instead of me griping at you from Newark, I'm just going to call it a week and get a little bit of rest. So you guys have a wonderful long weekend. Hope that you get a little bit of rest. I'm going to try to. And we'll see you on Monday. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Take care.